expanding their military strikes to the western part of the country. What do you make of that? What do you think their strategy is at this point?
I think the Russians would like to have at least two bands of encirclement around Kyiv. One, to close in on the city. A second, to keep any resupply or reinforcement out of the city. This is pretty much standard in urban warfare siege situations. And we have to remember that Vladimir Putin's orders were to encircle and besiege Kyiv and then force a change in the government. So yes, it's been really tough on the Russians. They've had poor command and control, poor planning, and perhaps the wettest winter and warmest winter in 10 years in the area. So trafficability is bad, but they are eventually going to be able to, or at least try to complete that encirclement from the west as well as up from the south and the east. So this is where the battle will be fought to prevent Kyiv from being encircled.
And let's talk about the south as well. I mean, we saw the extensive damage in Mariupol. The Russians have been able to take two towns, but they're not able still to completely take and occupy and hold big cities. What's your take on the southern part, that southern front, where Russia is obviously trying to create a contiguous territory, swath of territory in the south?
Yeah, Mariupol was a real obstacle, and they're doing everything they can to reduce it, and they lack the forces to actually go in and clear it block by block. So what they're doing is they're pounding it, basically, hoping that they'll kill or starve or otherwise disable the population as well as the military that's in there. And of course, from the Ukrainian side, it's really important that they hold out because this city blocks a Russian avenue of reinforcement. It also will be crucial if and when there's ever any diplomacy that ends this conflict, because that will be determined by the facts on the ground. So I think the Ukrainians are doing an extraordinarily heroic job in Mariupol. What needs to happen is the United Nations needs to step in.
Yeah. Sorry, finish your thought.
Yeah. The United Nations needs to step in here. We would have the United Nations in any other place. You wouldn't allow something like this. This is absolutely against international law, and yet here we are with a Russian military siege of a city, killing thousands of civilians, and where is the United Nations in this? Why is there not a UN safe zone there? Why is there not a humanitarian corridor to let relief supplies get in? This is simply an outrage in the 21st century, and I hope the United Nations will step up and do something about it.
The Russians are saying that they will consider that any foreign military and weapons shipments to Ukraine from outside countries, that those could be considered legitimate targets. I mean, this is just getting us ever closer to a direct confrontation between NATO allies and Russia. Do you find that concerning?
Well, absolutely, but we always knew this was going to be the case. I mean, there was a lot of brave talk before this happened that, well, don't worry, we'll continue to send in weapons and so forth, but you've got to get the weapons in. Now, as of now, the Ukrainians are doing all that. So, of course, they're a target to the Russians. Everybody in Ukraine is a target to the Russians. But there is an implicit threat here against NATO nations and against the storage depots and transit facilities in NATO nations. And should that happen, Russia should be under no misunderstanding. NATO will not tolerate that. So I think that this is all part of this push and push back struggle that we're in. And the United Nations needs to step in and resolve this.
All right, General Wesley Clark, thanks very much, as always, for your analysis. All right.